Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today I would like to break down and expand on the latest Inside Star Citizen, looking at a lot of the non-combat gameplay coming to the Pyro system. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support. And before we begin, the TOBII Eye Tracker 5 is back on sale at 20% off this time for the next 23 days, so if you have been after one, now is a great time to pick one up. And using that link below will take you to that deal, plus it will provide my channel with a direct kickback, so thank you so much in advance if you choose to do so. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was a new 4.0 episode highlighting the people who reside in the Pyro system, residents who are just trying to get by living on the frontier. Now, Pyro is not just going to be guns blazing all the time. There are many people living there. Yes, some of them are pirates, outlaws and gangs and so on, but there are also many who just want to exist. Now, Pyro's planets differ greatly from one another, and are obviously very different to those found in the Stanton system, but one key element of Pyro is that the system's star is reaching the end of its life cycle, and regularly emits huge amounts of solar flare radiation, and this has been accounted for each of the Pyro planets. So how does this flare impact each planet based on its proximity to the sun, but also how do the residents of each planet deal with the flare as well? Now, Pyro 1, for example, being the closest to the sun, will feel this influence the most. So what is life like there for the occupants of Pyro 1 versus Pyro 6, which is the most furthest planet from the star? And this will be represented in the location with its residents so that we can see the difference. Now, another key difference of Pyro from Stanton is that the Stanton system has huge established landing zones that are very well protected, offering a lot of security. However, Pyro, there isn't really as much of this kind of thing. You are much more exposed to all of the danger. Plus, things are much more spread out as well in Pyro. People aren't all bunched together in a single landing zone. Now, Pyro doesn't have a central source of power like we have the UEE in Stanton. Each outpost in Pyro has its own identity and sort of governing body, with player reputation playing a major role in what you will experience at each location. And having good reputation with one gang might see them defend you, but that might also mean you automatically start getting a negative rep with another gang, as they may be rivals. And one very exciting premise about these outposts and settlements in Pyro is how for 4.0 they will have many localized, smaller scale missions available, meaning you could get to one location and spend a very good amount of time doing various missions before even feeling the need or want to go elsewhere, which is something that Cloud Imperium have spoken about in the past. They want to offer hours, if not even days worth of content for players to do at landing zones, many planet-side locations, versus how it is now, where we find ourselves constantly hopping from one place to the next, even one planet to the next. So hopefully with 4.0 we will start to see this come along for Stanton as well. Although do bear in mind, it's not been confirmed we will see a lot of this localized mission content coming to Stanton in 4.0. It could just be for Pyro for the release of 4.0 and then hook them into Stanton as well. But I do hope for 4.0 that they have hooked a lot of these localized missions up in Stanton so that we have just as much content there as well. Now, before we hear about the new missions, as many of you have probably spotted already, there is a lot of sneak peeks of the RSI Zeus in the background and in the foreground, which is nice. This is a 4.0 release for the ES and CL. Plus, we can see a lot more of the updated ship HUDs and MFDs, which are looking way nicer, like this Aurora setup, with a lot of the settings options now exposed on the MFDs, rather than having to pause the game, or not really pause, but go to the menus, go to the settings, which obviously makes it far more dangerous than just being able to toggle it on your MFD. Plus, we can see the power triangle being reformatted into a bar style, and all the other information looking much nicer, although I do hope that we still see the power triangle and bars depending on the ship style. I feel like a bit more diversity between the ship MFDs would be nice. But anyway, in Pyro, many planets have farms, which will give an impression of how the people of Pyro live, and there will be missions for things like crop picking, grabbing various plants around the large fields and greenhouses, and even the lawless farms grow alternative crops for various reasons. Now, I must say that I do love the look of these farm locations Not only do they sell the idea that the people living there are doing this to get by, either consuming the crop or selling it and trading it, but visually they are pretty stunning, with a really cool backdrop in many occasions. And as much as I am looking forward to taking part in crop harvesting missions, as they will be very immersive, I will certainly do that. But I am sure that I won't do them all the time, as I will get bored, but it's nice to have the option. Plus, when I am finally able to build my own homestead, harvesting my own crops to trade or to consume will be even more interesting. Now, talking of trade, Pyro will have goods that are only available and grown in Pyro, and these can be shipped back to Stanton for a good profit, and I suspect the vice versa will apply here as well, so playing that commodity game going between each system will be challenging and somewhat dangerous, but also, I suspect, very rewarding. And alongside the crop picking missions, which might not only offer missions on farms, potentially we could see NPCs just simply requesting X amount of a harvestable and a player going and heading out to try and locate it, but there will also be repair missions, tasking the player to either repair using RMC or the new charge and drain tech process, which allows players to transfer an electrical charge from one component to another. And a member of my community, Ferk, actually shared an image of this function on the multi-tool, which I had never seen before, so big thank you to Ferk there. But as you can see, it has a readout which is placeholder for now, and shows a voltage on the right hand side and the battery capacity on the left, and will likely require the player to match the voltage and components needed to kickstart it. So a very nice option there. But basically at farms and many other locations, there is a lot of focus that is non-combat. And the same goes for the new scrapyards. Now these are locations where players will be able to service their ships, as space station servicing won't be as available as it is in Stanton. But scrapyards will be full of ship skeletons and debris to show how the ships have been processed and disassembled and then placed around the location. They will also have small shops to allow players to gather basic supplies, and the repair locations are in sunken pits where players can land and get repaired and refueled and rearmed. Also, do check out the dashboard for the Drake Buccaneer, but personally, I love the style of these pits, very Star Wars, creates this nice bit of verticality as well, and seeing them from a distance as you are coming in to land, and then landing in them and getting out of your ship, looking up at the walls, you get a real sense of scale, which is cool. Plus, I can just imagine one day an NPC or player, if we can eventually build them ourselves, walking out to meet you as you exit your ship, just asking you what you want doing. A refuel, repair, and then leaving it with them. Now, scrapyards will also have a lot of non-combat gameplay, with repairing items around the location, like pipes, canisters, and other faulty machinery being a big part of this. And there was also a new mission type on the progress tracker, which I have mentioned before, but this was called ship restoration or vehicle restoration, which tasks players with using what they can find around a scrapyard to fully fix up a ship back to flyable or sailable again. And this is likely waiting for the resource network, the engineering systems, but using things like RMC to patch up the hull, checking around the scrapyard for ship parts and components and such. This is a 4.0 mission, but we are yet to hear Cloud Imperium address this. I've only seen it on the progress tracker. Also, for scrapyards, personally, I would love to see these locations offer credits for players towing in abandoned or derelict ships, and offering maybe second-hand ships for sale as well, as you can walk around and look at them. They look a bit battered, but at a cheaper price than going to New Deal. I think that would be amazing. Now, one thing about these scrapyards that I am slightly concerned about is the lack of an ATC, as apparently you just arrive, find a parking space, land there, and then get fixed up and then fly out when you're done. Now, I'm all up for testing this and seeing how it works, but I can just see a lot of chaos where people creating a bit of a queue and getting annoyed at people, but it is certainly a little bit of what they want with Pyro, this chaos, so I'm all for seeing how this goes and recording the outcome. Now, another mission type that they have for these scrapyards is FPS salvaging, where players will be scraping panels for RMC found around the scrapyards, but not in ships, using the multi-tool and the dedicated tractor beam. And I certainly think that this would be a great addition in Stanton in various areas. And on that note, I do wonder what or why there is a hold-up in getting the dedicated salvaging gun capable of selling its RMC from its triple canisters, as that is something that we could be doing right now in the PU. And I noticed on the issue council the bug for it was fixed, but they haven't rolled it out yet. So either they're waiting for something like this, or they have other plans for it. But Cloud Imperium, if you are watching, please let me sell the RMC canisters from the dedicated salvage gun. I would be so grateful. Anyway, there are some other engineering mission types that can be found at scrapyards, this time not using a beam, but instead utilizing the engineering system, like these relay nodes, tasking you to find a particular working component and then replace the broken one to get it working again. Although, if you have taken a component from a different machine, that will likely then disable that machine. Now, I'm getting the impression that items like relays and engineering components might be somewhat hard to come by in the Pyro system, which, if that is the case, would open up a lot of interesting gameplay, from hauling components from Stanton to Pyro, of which would likely be quite a highly prized haul for pirates, to being an engineer in Pyro and trying to gather as many of these components and relays as possible so that you can help service machinery without having to cripple another machine just to get something back up and running again. So a lot of potential outcomes from limiting the availability of certain things in each system, which I'm sure we will start to see a lot more of as we get more systems. Now, as if hearing about these new non-combat missions wasn't a favourite part of this week's Inside Star Citizen for me, hearing about and seeing these trade posts certainly was as well. Trade posts are where players will be selling and buying their goods, trading in commodities, and based on the groups that you're aligned with, this will determine what you may be able to find at each location. Now, each trading post focuses on hauling, deliveries, and shuttling goods around, and as mentioned, each faction will run and operate them, offering different wares. For example, the Citizens of Prosperity have a trading post called Jackson's Swap on Pyro 2, or Conard's View on Pyro 6, and Conard's View is a very cold and inhospitable location due to the distance from the sun, and with the trading post being sheltered in a crater, they say it makes for a safer location away from the headhunter gangs. So less competition, a little less piracy. But Jackson's Swap on Pyro 2 is in more of a desert location, sheltered between two buffs, and has more of a Wild West style to it, with a lot of landing pads around, and I believe the thing falling from the sky in the background is just a big Benny's machine, as we have seen this in a lot of other Inside Star Citizens, so I don't think it's hinting at anything personally. But this location has a lot of defensive measures to help protect against other factions. Talking of which, the narrative team have actually been working out each gang's territories, I believe within Pyro, which will mean we will see turf wars unfold, and actually even be part of if we wanted to help. But seeing the various gangs and groups fight it out amongst themselves, that will not just be epic to watch and unfold, but imagine the loot afterwards. Woo! Or salvage. Anyway, Jackson's Swap visually echoes the Frontier style, again like the Wild West, and inside the buildings you will see a lot of artisanal styles. Now personally, I do love this style, and will certainly be siding with the Citizens of Pyro, likely living close to Jackson's Swap for a long while, running missions for them around the location, maybe going a little further afield, or just heading out to see what I can find, and then return and trade what I can. Cannot wait to get to this place. Now, if on the other hand you want to align with the Headhunters gang, you can visit Gonner's Deal, or Golden Riviera. Now, Gonner's Deal is a small outlaw trade post found within Pyro 4's massive crater, and is seen as a bit of a stopgap between Pyro 3 and Pyro 6, as Pyro 5 is a gas giant. So having this location as a midway stop-off to get refueled will be a big benefit before making that bigger journey, as the Pyro system is about twice the size of the Stanton system. And I do love how, for many people, siding with the Headhunters gang might be something they consider doing simply to have this advantage of using a spot like Gunner's Deal to help navigate through the Pyro system. Now, the Golden Riviera trade post was once a prosperous location that has been taken over by the Headhunter gang and is now a bit of a sleazy town full of seedy people who have basically run the town into a bit of a dump. But here you might be able to find more illegal goods to trade, more interesting goods, even things like slave pods. So there's definitely going to be a nice contrast between all locations, and here you may potentially find some really interesting, hard to find items that if you bring them back to Stanton or other locations in Pyro, they might be worth a lot more. Now do remember that at these locations, Although there is no law or jurisdiction, it will obviously feel quite unnerving. However, if you are aligned with the gangs, or even if you're not aligned with them, if someone comes in and then starts shooting up the place, they will defend themselves. And if there are gun and missile turrets, they will be pretty deadly. Anyway, that was last week's Inside Star Citizen. A great episode with a lot of information about stuff that I am interested in, and I can't wait to see a Q&A Star Citizen live, hopefully coming this Friday. Anyway, with that said, that is the end of the video. If you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. We are fast approaching 70,000, so thank you so much if you are already subscribed. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome over there, whether you are new to the game or a veteran. Always a great time hanging out and chatting. Great place to ask your questions about anything Star Citizen as well. Right now, we're just checking out Alpha 3.2.4 and getting excited for 4.0. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.